Hey guys, I'm Will from Tested.
I'm Norm from Tested.
Norman Chan.
It is the end of the year, which means laptop manufacturers are releasing a ton of laptops.
Ultrabook season is on.
Ultrabook season is on, gift giving Ultrabook season. And every year, the past 2 years, have reviewed Lenovo's Yoga laptop, Yoga Pro laptop.
So this is their answer to Microsoft Surface. It's a laptop that also folds in all sorts of different directions, and you can open it at any angle. So you can use it as a laptop, you can use it as a tablet. This one looks really thin and light.
This one is especially thin and light. So the Yoga 1 was something we saw at CES 2 years ago now, kind of a Windows 8 launch device.
Almost 3 years ago.
Almost 3 now. And this is the 3rd generation, and it's interesting, like we don't cover a lot of laptops, but this is the first, I want to talk about this one specifically because it has a unique form factor, and also it's the first laptop I've used that has Intel's new Broadwell chip in it.
Ooh.
And which is one of the reasons it is so thin and light.
Okay, so hold on. What changes between Haswell and Broadwell?
Well, I'll talk about that. There's a big section about that.
Wow.
But let's talk about the Yoga as a laptop. So it's called Yoga because Lenovo has this design where its hinge can bend in all sorts of different directions.
They must be really pleased with that hinge.
They are super pleased.
It looks like a watch band.
It does. Whereas your MacBooks can only go to a certain amount of degrees. I believe it's like that much.
Way less than that.
It's not even that much. Maybe like that much on a MacBook Air.
This is a 13-inch MacBook Air.
Yeah.
Oh no, it goes a little bit further.
Exactly. Your MacBook
right
Air goes that much. This, which is a 13.3-inch laptop, goes all the way back. And
wow.
So using laptop mode, they call, I don't know, this probably isn't a mode that you can use it in, but this is the stand mode, and then you can even, they say, use it as a tablet.
Does it click into place now when it's flat as a tablet?
No, that was just the sound. You can't use it as a tablet. This
is
still too heavy.
How much does it weigh?
It's 2.6 pounds.
Oh, that's 2 1/6 iPad Airs.
Yes. So I would never use it as a tablet. You can, maybe cradle it and use it in one hand. The ways I like to use it is a laptop, or if I'm watching movies in the stand mode.
It seems like laying in bed with it in the stand mode, you could watch some hellacious movies.
That works totally well.
Or airplane seat back, maybe.
Or, as I've demonstrated before, I do the mode wide shot where I lean back on the couch, and I can like have it flat.
You call that one the full Chan?
Yeah.
I can't imagine ever actually doing that. That looks horrible for your wrists.
Oh, it's fine. My wrists are fine.
So Lenovo's always done good hinges. The old ThinkPads were one of the only laptops that would fold all the way flat. It was incredibly handy. It was one of my favorite features of those laptops.
So this is a new hinge design, and if we look at the bottom here, it is actually 6 connecting points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right there. 6 connecting points, and if we look up close, they call this a watch band hinge design. They say there are like 800 metal parts in there, but what it basically means is that it's a strong hinge, or it's a rigid hinge, where you can hold it in a variety of these positions.
This is nothing new for the Yoga. I mean, the hinge. This is a new hinge design, but this is nothing new for the Yoga.
Right, and in the past Yogas, if I put it in something like the stand design, my worry is that as I tap screens, it would wobble. It would, you're tapping the screen, and you get still a little bit of that, but it doesn't droop. So if I, for example, hold it here, and I'm browsing, like pinching and zooming, I'm not giving it a lot of flex. If I do a lot of tapping, for example, then yeah, a little bit, but that's fine. I think all in all, the hinge, even though it does look, maybe a little fashion-y, fashion industry-like, it's a good design. It's a good hinge design.
How do you end up using this the most? Are you using it as a laptop?
It is mostly either laptop or
the reverse.
In the stand position where I don't need that extra space between me and the laptop. I can hold it close, I can put it on my knees, and I can use this.
It seems like that's fairly consistent across all 3 Yogas you've tested.
Yeah, exactly. So use case, it's still exactly the same. Also the same is that it still has the same 13.3-inch screen as last year's Yoga 2 Pro. And Lenovo made a big deal because they have a really high resolution screen. It's 3800 or 3200 by 1800. That's a lot of pixels.
That's a lot of pixels for a 13-inch laptop.
Yeah, it's higher than your 2560 by 1440. It's 3200, but that screen, the quality of the screen of last year's Lenovo Yoga Pro was not that great. The pixel arrangement on this is, I believe, RGBY or RGBW, and there's an extra white pixel in there, and some of the yellow colors looked like mustardy. It was a big problem. It was because of the way they did power management. You had to use a firmware to fix that. Thankfully, that's gone. I do not notice mustard yellows on this laptop. And a way to search that or to test that is if you just go to Google. If you have a Yoga Pro, search in Google yellow and look for image. And if your images or if your yellow colors, for example, the first one, that to me does not look mustard yellow. It
looks like a normal yellow to me.
Looks like a normal yellow. But if you look up close to the pixels, the resolution isn't all there. The pixel fill isn't great. It's kind of like if you look at an OLED screen, like a Samsung high-resolution OLED screen, that's a pentile pixel arrangement, sub-pixel arrangement. Because of the sub-pixel arrangement on this LCD, you don't get as good pixel fill.
So essentially, if this is analogous to looking through a screen door, the mesh of the screen door is thicker than on other similar laptops,
and not the kind of the square grid that you would normally expect it. So text that's 100% resolution, very fine text, is not resolved as nicely. That's why.
This is still a 16 by 9 screen, right?
It's still a 16 by 9 screen. It's basically it's comparable to like a 1600 by 900 resolution screen, but pixel doubled
up, yeah.
Which is why they encourage you to run this at a scaled resolution. And Windows 8.1 lets you adjust that on a resolution basis. So right now I'm in Windows settings, and I can actually change my text. I'm actually at 150% scaling.
So essentially it's somewhere in between. It's 24 by 1350 or something equivalent resolution?
Something like that.
Okay.
And they've fixed many things. For example, Dropbox now looks correct. That was something that I noticed did not look good last year.
Well, since last year, Windows 8.1 has come out, right? Windows 8.1 was brand new when this came out, when last year's Yoga came out.
But there are even some built-in applications where the text, even at 150% scaling, is scaled to 100%.
Wow, that's impossible to read.
Impossible to read, and even when you put your head really up close to it, the text looks dithered because of the sub-pixel.
So even you aren't using this at 100%.
Absolutely
You're using
not.
it at 150.
I'm using this at 150.
What happens at 200 at normal? So it ships at 200% scaling,
It does
right?
ship at well, no, it's just at 150. I think 200% scale, everything's too big.
Okay, and then you're essentially might as well be using a 13-inch MacBook Air.
I wish this had a 1900 by 1920 by 1080 screen. I think 1080p is for a 13-inch screen is perfect. I would run that at 100%. But they want to sell the PPIs. Numbers are bigger, so they'll sell you that. I also don't like the bezel on this. It's pretty thick. I'll maximize a screen, for example, and it's a pretty thick bezel on the bottom.
I mean, I think you have to have that bezel if they're going to say that you can use this as a tablet, though. There has to be some place, even though you can't hold it with your hand like that on the bezel, I think you have to have the bezel if it's a touch device.
But it is lighter, so it's thinner. If I close this up, it is 0.5 inches thick right here. It's 2.6 pounds. It's lighter than your 13-inch MacBook Air, which is about 3 pounds. It's still heavier.
2.6 pounds is too heavy to hold one-handed for any appreciable length of time.
And the Surface Pro 3 is my benchmark of a laptop which can also be held with one hand as a tablet. And that's on the border of that. The Surface Pro 3, I believe, is a little lighter still. I have the exact weight. 1.7 pounds without the keyboard and 2.44 pounds. So this is under 2 pounds at the Surface Pro 3.
I mean, it's still too heavy to hold.
I hold this, yeah.
Okay. I mean,
not like a tablet.
Yeah, you don't hold it like that.
I hold it with the pen.
Yeah.
And draw
like you would a legal pen.
Right.
Now,
okay. They get to this weight and size because, as I mentioned earlier, it's using a new, lighter chipset.
Do we get to talk about Broadwell now?
Let's talk about Broadwell.
Okay. Yeah. This was delayed from earlier in 2014. We were expecting to see this in time for the fall buying season for laptops for kids going to school. But this is the first laptop we've tested that has Broadwell. What has changed?
So Broadwell is 14 nanometers in terms of its die process, as opposed to Haswell's 22 nanometers. And Broadwell will come out in several categories. This first Broadwell actually is Broadwell Y. In the Surface, well, it's the Y moniker of chips.
Okay.
Haswell came in the Haswell that came with Surface Pro 3, and last year's Yoga 2, and many laptops, many Ultrabooks these days were the U class of Haswell. If you look as if U4300.
U means ultra low voltage.
Not ultra low voltage, but low voltage, and had a TDP of 15 watts. So at max power, it would use about 15 watts, the CPU, of electricity.
Actually, TDP means it's 15 watts of heat
dissipation.
Out. Yeah,
exactly. With the Y class of processors, and they label that actually Core M. They'll call this the Core M hyphen Y something 57 something. It actually has a max TDP of 4.5 watts.
Wow.
Which is a third of the power of the heat dissipation, a third of the power necessary for that chip.
For the
but
Surface.
The performance is not equal. So this one, I believe, the base
Lenovo.
clock, the Lenovo using the Broadwell chip, has a base clock of 1.1 gigahertz, and then with turbo, it goes up to 2.6.
And it's a dual core?
And it's a dual core.
Okay.
The Surface had a higher base clock and clocked even higher, and also the graphics chipset was faster as well.
Right, the Surface has the HD4400, right?
Even though it's a higher number, HD 5300 in this, it's actually a worse graphics
It's
chip.
the second number that's the important one, right?
Yes, I believe. First number's generation.
Yeah.
So it's not the Broadwell we were hoping for. What it does get you, though, is okay performance for your, watching YouTube, for your light Photoshop, very light. I'm talking about if you don't use the concept of layers and you're talking just saturation, resizing, and masking, that's fine.
Is it memory that's the problem, or is it the CPU is just slow?
It's the CPU.
Wow.
It's because with Broadwell and the way that Lenovo software has it built in, the way that power manages, the way that throttles the CPU, it wants to run at the lowest clock speed as long as possible. And when it ramps up, so that's 1.1 gigahertz, when it ramps up to that 2.6, the fan starts spinning up.
I was going to
and it
say,
gets
there
warm.
is a fan.
There
right?
is a fan,
Okay.
and it does spin up and it gets hot. And then battery goes down the drain. So
Where does battery start?
battery starts in terms of time. Lenovo says 9 hours. Battery starts when you're just doing web browsing and maybe a few YouTube videos, 7 hours.
That's in your actual
That's
testing.
actual use. I'm getting at most. I've never gotten more than 7.5 hours.
I mean, and that's
using
the
this.
benefit. So if you look at Haswell, that's not a substantial jump from Haswell to Broadwell. It is a huge jump from Ivy Bridge to Broadwell, though.
Yeah, but when I'm actually doing something, when I'm actually in a bunch of Google Docs and I have a ton of tabs open and I'm using Photoshop, no more than 5 hours. It's about 4.5 hours of actual real productivity use. And even with a laptop like, with my MacBook Air from last year, with the Surface Pro 3 from this year, and even last year's Yoga with the 15-watt CPUs, I could do some actual heavy work. I could do things like Premiere.
Your laptop is good for 8 hours doing normal stuff.
I'll use it with things like Lightroom. So I installed Lightroom on this laptop and I have it running here, for example. And I had Premiere running, and I tried to edit a video on here using Premiere, and I could barely implement effects or do any scrubbing. It just chugged.
1080p video, I assume.
1080p video.
Out of your camera, or
Out of
like
DSLR
a GoPro or something. Okay.
Yeah. So H.264 video, exporting. It's not going to run well.
So this doesn't. So the Y series is the lower power. It's lower power than the U series. When we see U series processors, presumably they'll be more analogous to.
That's the hope.
The Surface Pro in your laptop.
That is the hope. And it's unfortunate that timing-wise, the Y series processors for Broadwell launched Q3, Q4. They're out now. The Yoga, this one is one of the first ones, I think, just today. There's a Dell laptop that was announced with that as well. But we won't see the U class and also the higher level ones until CES.
Would this chassis theoretically support a U processor? It won't, right?
Not this chassis. So
Okay.
this is designed for that chassis in mind. My hypothesis, and a lot of that is also because of the battery. They use a 45 watt-hour battery.
It's a relatively small battery.
Relatively small, reduced from 54 from last year. And so it's this whole thin and light design, while it is 2.6 pounds, while it is half an inch thick, is to support the performance that you get from Broadwell Y class.
What about, does it get hot?
It doesn't get very hot. Now,
Okay.
the fan does spin up. It does get warm.
The Surface gets hot.
Surface, yes, the Surface, especially Surface Pro 3 back here, gets, and that's an x86 processor as well, gets hot. This definitely gets warm, but you also notice performance drops.
Okay.
Your performance will drop to a point where it's just, it'll throttle. And that's, again, the stuff that's built in.
I assume you didn't try games on this.
No, didn't try games on it. Based on a notebook check, for example, they've looked at all the processors. You can't really run 3D games on this.
You should not. You should light adventure games.
Exactly.
FTL.
Right. It does come with a SSD, 256 gig SSD. It's their own SSD chip. Uses an M.2 connector. It's an M-SATA SSD, so it's not going to be particularly fast.
The M.2 connector are the little gum. They look like a stick of chewing gum.
It's a stick of chewing gum with a wide in the middle and 2 small ones on the outside. It does have a webcam, has micro HDMI.
It only has a front-facing cam, though, right?
Front-facing camera. In terms of connectivity, has USB 3.0 on this side, and then the other side actually has another USB 3.0. I did like that they added 2 USB 3.0s, and actually the power connector, which I think is probably one of the coolest innovations, is a USB 2.0.
Hold on. So wait, I don't understand.
So it connects to power with this thing, and it's a keyed connector which looks like a USB plug, but that's actually the power brick, and only fits in one port, which is the power port.
So you use the USB port both for USB and to charge?
And to charge.
That is super duper clever.
Yeah. So this, when you're not plugging it in, if you're flying and you're not flying with a place that you can plug it in, then it doubles as a USB 2.0.
Okay, so I'm gonna devil's advocate here.
You're never gonna have it plugged into 3 USB things.
Right, that's the
go.
thing. Is you can't if you're using it as your main computer at your desktop.
Right.
You're not gonna be able to have. You're gonna have to buy a USB hub.
Right. Well, but it does have 2
deal.
USB 3.0 ports.
That's true. Surface has one.
Exactly.
Right?
Surface has one.
What about the trackpad? That's always my Windows laptops. The trackpad always sucks.
I think it's a good trackpad. I think it's a good size. I still don't think it's as good as
do, like,
the Apple
multi-touch
ones.
gestures and stuff
does
like that?
all your gestures. Does your side swipe ins for Windows 8.
Is it native
your charms.
drivers or is it Lenovo's
It's
custom thing?
native drivers.
Okay.
What I don't like is the backlit keyboard. It's too recessed. Again, that's to accommodate the thinness. You're going to be shocked. I'm going to give this to you.
Okay.
I'm going to let you just put your fingers on it to try to type.
Wow, that's
There is like no throw on those keys.
Well, I mean, they have to do that because it has to sit down when it's upside down and when it's a tablet. That's weird. And of course, the keyboard turns off when you're upside when you flip it
you're
around,
in stand
right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a little rough. The backlight was nice though.
Yeah, the backlight's nice. Again, this feels like they were shooting for 3 specs. They were shooting for the weight, the thickness, and the screen resolution.
Yeah.
They know that the battery life isn't the hottest. Performance, they're hoping the type of people who want to buy this laptop aren't the type of people who want to buy actual workhorses to do video editing or a lot of Photoshop work, image editing. And it's kind of expensive. It's $1,300 for this configuration.
Wow.
A lot of that is the 256 gig SSD, and this being that new i5 processor.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money for a laptop that can't do that much.
Yeah, I would rather they cut the cost down, lower the resolution, put a good 1080p panel here with a better color gamut. This one has 72%. I don't think the colors are great on this. Again,
I mean, you're looking at high resolution photographs.
Exactly.
Is Windows smart enough now to display the photos at the native resolution inside Lightroom?
Yeah. So the photos are being blown up to their native resolution.
Okay.
Adobe actually just runs everything at 100%.
I mean, it seemed like last year a lot of your complaints about that Yoga were tied to Windows not being particularly good at dealing with the higher resolution screen. That stuff seems markedly improved?
Yeah. Windows is maybe not perfect, but it's not the problem. I think the problem is that the screen quality, the screen they chose is not that great of a screen. And the price is too high for what you're going to be buying and using this for.
$1,300 is, I mean, it sounds like it's competing in terms of capability. It's somewhere between a Chromebook and a cheap Ultrabook, and it's priced like an expensive Ultrabook.
Exactly.
So that's kind of a bummer.
I wish it was $1,000 with a 1080p screen. That would be okay, but again, I want to see this with a better processor, with the new Broadwell.
I mean, it seems like that kind of a premium Hinge and all that stuff is tied. It seems like a really premium laptop with kind of an processor.
Yeah, if for someone who doesn't care about that stuff, who just wants something that looks nice and it has a nicely designed hinge and maybe needs a really big screen to use as a tablet, that's okay. But I still think if I were to get a laptop today, this holiday, I'd get the Surface Pro 3.
Wow. Oh, if you want a tablet laptop.
If you want a tablet laptop, yeah, exactly.
So,
a Windows tablet laptop.
Yeah. If you don't want a Windows tablet laptop, are you still a MacBook Air recommender?
I don't know. Ask me next year.
Sounds good. That'll do it for us today. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you all next time.
See ya.